After 2 years of taking care of a paralyzed CEO, he finally recovered. The first thing he did was propose to the woman who had once abandoned him, his beloved ex. The media called it a love that withstood all trials, a couple reunited at last. I tilted my head up, staring at the giant screen in the plaza that was live streaming the proposal. I said nothing, only pulled the ring from my pocket and tossed it into the trash. Whatever I owed him, I finally repaid in full. People on the pedestrian street had all come to a halt, heads lifted toward the outdoor screens. It wasn't just this square, every big screen in West City was broadcasting the same proposal. The footage was sharp enough to catch the glimmering tears in the bride-to-be's eyes. One glance at the scene, and you'd know it was Leo Smith's handiwork. In the final months before he fully recovered, he spent nearly every day sketching out this proposal. Even the fireworks, he chose the exact patterns himself. Back then, he'd held the back of my neck with cold fingers and asked, "What kind of flower do you like?" I told him, "Hyacinths." But on the screen now, the entire venue was submerged in a passionate sea of roses. And the woman standing at the center wasn't me. It was his ex-girlfriend, celebrity designer Amy Clark. I looked up quietly. The proposal had already reached the moment Leo dropped to one knee. The diamond ring in that black velvet box sparkled like a star. In comparison, the one in my pocket didn't even deserve to be called a ring. Beside me, a group of girls squealed with excitement. "Oh my God, Leo Smith, CEO of Smith Group, looks drop-dead gorgeous with that slicked back hair. No wonder they used to call him the West City Playboy. Guess the Playboy's finally fallen. They say Amy Clark gave up everything to care for him during the 2 years he was paralyzed. It's like a fairy tale love story come true." I quietly squeezed my wrist, where a faint brown scar still lingered, a leftover from those 2 years I'd spent caring for him. Back then, Amy Clark had broken up with Leo and gone off to Milan for further studies. The crowd held its breath, the proposal had reached its climax. Amy lowered her head, eyes brimming with emotion as she choked out, "I do." The ring slid onto her finger, and Leo stood to press a kiss to her lips. In that very moment, fireworks exploded over all of West City. With that kind of grand display, it wasn't just West City, probably the whole country knew about it by now. Which made sense. Leo had always been that kind of person. When he loved someone, he wanted the whole world to know. The crowd roared with excitement. The girl beside me bumped into my head in her thrill and grabbed my wrist. "They're so perfect together, don't you think?" I ignored the pain in my wrist and smiled faintly. "Perfect." She glanced at my pale face and finally let go, her mouth opening to apologize. But by then, I had already turned and walked away, swallowed by the noise of celebration. Behind me, on the giant screen, the lovers kissed passionately as the city cheered and fireworks bloomed above. I came to a sudden stop beside a trash can. Crouching down for a moment to catch my breath, I slowly stood and pulled a dull, oversized ring from my pocket. It wasn't pretty. It didn't fit. But thankfully, I no longer had any reason to keep it. I dropped it into the trash. My heart had never felt so calm. Not a single tear fell. From this moment on, what I owed to the Smith family, what I owed to Leo, was completely repaid. I was kicked out of the Smith family group. I used to have my own private office. Now, I couldn't even find a desk. HR handed me a cardboard box. "Special Assistant White, your things are all in here." I had a decent reputation in the company, so she lowered her voice. "President Smith personally signed your termination. You'll get compensation, just go quickly, okay?" She was being kind about it. I could guess what Leo really said, tell her to get lost. Probably said while lounging in a chair, careless and aloof, like I was nothing. I struggled to carry the box. As I passed my former office, I finally saw who its new owner was. It had already been turned into Amy Clark's personal lounge. Fragments of design drafts were scattered casually about. Photos of her and Leo, smiling in intimate poses, now covered the wall where I once posted his tightly packed schedule. I looked away. My fingers gripping the edge of the box had gone white for a moment. Then I loosened them. Forget it. I was shoved to the ground at the company entrance. My box flipped over, and my belongings scattered across the pavement. There were too many people. Someone's stiletto heel crushed the back of my hand, and the pain was sharp and piercing. The sea of reporters and onlookers surged toward a single direction. Clutching my hand, I lifted my head, and saw Amy Clark, arm in arm with Leo, making their appearance. She loved red. Her black hair and crimson dress made her stand out. But the man beside her outshone her completely. Leo didn't like crowds. He looked annoyed, turning his head away. Yet he still shielded Amy with tender care. The reporters swarmed them, thrusting microphones forward, questions flying one after another. "Miss Clark, your proposal has been the top trending topic for an entire week. As the leading lady in this fairy tale romance, do you have anything to say?" Amy beamed, radiant as ever. I'm just grateful that during the lowest 2 years of his life, I was the one by his side. Leo had always stood at the pinnacle, blessed, admired, until the car accident left him paralyzed for 2 years. During that time, he was pushed aside by the world and treated with cold indifference. Anyone, would be more qualified to say they stood by him than Amy Clark, who boarded a plane and left for Milan. Only I stayed. But Leo didn't refute her words. On the contrary, he seemed happy. He indulged the lie. He lowered his gaze, looking at Amy with a soft, tender expression. Like a wild wind that had finally come to rest upon the river. Flashes exploded around them, as entertainment reporters captured the moment they stared into each other's eyes. Suddenly, Leo turned, his gaze cut through the crowd and landed directly on me. His eyes were almost icy. I met his stare quietly, offering a faint smile. My heart felt surprisingly light. He frowned, almost unconsciously. Truthfully, I was grateful too. Grateful that, in the darkest 2 years of his life, I had been the one beside him. Every bit of kindness I gave, has now been repaid. The cab still hadn't arrived. My blood sugar was low. My stomach ached. I crouched on the sidewalk, hand pressed over my abdomen. The hand that had been stepped on was now swollen and bleeding, throbbing with pain. Amy Clark, to Leo, must be someone truly special. I'd known Leo for a long time. He was born the crown prince of the Smith family, the heir apparent. As he grew up, his scandals were countless, but the only girlfriend he ever publicly acknowledged was Amy Clark. Their reconciliation wasn't surprising. A sudden honk startled me. I instinctively looked up. A sleek black car pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down slowly, revealing Leo's familiar, languid face. He tapped his knuckles rhythmically against the steering wheel. Stomach pain again? My eyelashes fluttered. He let out a mocking laugh, eyes full of disdain. Serves you right. I lowered my gaze. It felt like being thrown back 2 years, to when Leo used to treat me like dirt. Back then, he once told me that someone like me being allowed to live was already a gift. Only now did I realize, all his so-called tenderness afterward was nothing but an act. He was afraid I'd leave, because if I did, no one would take care of him anymore. I ignored him. The sound of high heels approached from behind. Amy Clark walked past me and slid into the passenger seat, pouting, "Leo, sorry I'm late." The reporters were impossible to shake. "I shouldn't have let you go ahead, you could have shielded me." As she buckled her seatbelt, she turned her head and caught sight of me. Her voice faltered mid-sentence, and her face paled visibly. Flustered, she urged, "Leo, let's go. We're already late for the gala." Leo frowned, almost as if by reflex. I endured the pain, looked up at him, and figured this would be the last time we ever spoke. "I watched the engagement live stream," I said softly. "The real thing turned out even better than the design sketch you showed me back then." I hesitated a moment, then added, "Everything looked perfect, except for the missing hyacinths. Congratulations. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness." Leo didn't smile. His hand, resting on the car window, suddenly tensed, veins popping, knuckles white. As if what he'd heard wasn't a blessing. On that hand was a silver band, a wedding ring. I lowered my eyes, missing the expression he gave me in that moment. Amy sat quietly for a few seconds before speaking in a gentle tone. "Leo, it's getting late. Let's not waste time on people who don't matter." Above me, a voice fell cold and faint. Leo said, "Monica White don't regret this." He waited. When no reply came, he scoffed, started the engine, and stepped on the gas. I dazedly looked up, only to catch a glimpse of the car's taillights as it sped away. It reminded me of the way he used to race sports cars. Even a well-meant blessing, if it came from my mouth, would somehow make Leo angry. He was sick like that. But I had no regrets. The cab still didn't show. Resigned, I crouched by the roadside again, until my phone vibrated in my pocket. One message, "Where are you?" I hesitated a moment before sending over my location. Half an hour later, I sat in the back of a business-class van, awkwardly holding out my hand while the young man before me lowered his head to clean the wound. James Wilson looked up. "Does it hurt?" I tensed immediately and shook my head. He exhaled softly and gently blew across my skin. The cool breeze made me instinctively curl my fingers. Eyes wide, I muttered, "I said it doesn't hurt." James let go of my hand at last and replied slowly, "Didn't hear you." In that moment, I felt like a traitorous courtier switching allegiances. After all, I used to be Leo's most loyal shadow. Every fight Leo got into, at least 10 out of 10 were with James. From schoolyards to boardrooms, the two of them had always been sworn enemies. Especially during Leo's paralysis, James nearly swallowed his entire empire. Even now, though Leo and I had no ties left, it was hard to break that habit. James leaned back lazily. "There's a banquet tonight. I still need a date." I looked down. My wound had already been bandaged. "Will Leo be there?" James gave a nonchalant, I didn't look at him. It was a long time before I said quietly, if you're hoping to use me to hurt Leo, you'll be disappointed. He doesn't care about me. My voice was soft, a simple statement of fact. James toyed with a lighter in his hand. A flash of flame lit up his knuckles. He said, you never know. I turned my head to stare out the window as the city lights rushed past. And suddenly, I remembered Leo at 17. Laughing in front of all his friends, arrogant and cruel. Monica White, he said. There's no way I'd ever like someone like her. James stayed with me the entire time I got my hair done and tried on gowns. He had picky taste. I tried over a dozen designer dresses before he finally nodded in satisfaction. Truthfully, I hadn't wanted to attend the gala, but when James asked, I couldn't say no. After I left the Smith family half a month ago, I hadn't been allowed to take anything with me. It was James's grandmother from the Wilson family who took me in. So whatever James asked, I tried to oblige. When I tried on a silver white gown, its hem flowing like a river of stars, James finally paused. His Adam's apple bobbed slightly. That one, he said. I looked toward the mirror, and was stunned. The girl reflected back at me was both unfamiliar and hauntingly familiar. So stunning, it made me dizzy. Like the invisible girl who once stood quietly behind Leo, finally stepping into the spotlight. A version of myself I had never seen before. I reached out, gently touching the cool surface of the mirror. James stepped behind me and let a delicate necklace slip from his fingers. He tilted his head to fasten it around my neck, his breath warm against my skin. His voice was lazy, casual, Monica White. I'm not asking you to provoke them. I just want Leo to realize, he's not just paralyzed. He's blind. It was the first time I ever attended such a formal business gala. All those years beside Leo, I had never once been the woman on his arm. James and I arrived late. Just before entering the ballroom, I tilted my head and glanced at him. The light hit his face in that moment, sharp jawline, handsome profile, radiant and striking. I only realized I was staring when whispers around us started. Who's the girl with President Wilson? They look amazing together. Wait, doesn't he never bring a date to events? Then someone, a longtime friend of Leo's, stared at me for a second before blurting out, *T, isn't that Leo's forgettable assistant, Monica White? The words had barely landed when a wine glass shattered nearby. I followed the sound. Leo was standing not far away, red wine dripping down from the shards onto Amy Clark's dress. She let out a low-pitched yelp. But Leo didn't look at her. He was staring at me. For the first time in his life, truly seeing me. And he looked stunned. To him, I must have seemed both unfamiliar and dazzling. Amy Clark looked up. It took her a moment to recognize me, and when she did, her expression was one of disbelief. I nodded politely, then turned to accompany James as he made his rounds. Only then did Leo seem to realize there was another man beside me. The warmth faded from his peach blossom eyes, replaced by a sharp chill. He strode toward us, reaching out to pull me away. James reacted quickly. He raised an arm to block Leo and gently pulled me behind him. Leo glared past him. Monica White, come here. I had never once taken anyone else's side in front of him. Never even thought about hiding behind another man. Every time he called my name, no matter how far, I would run straight to him. But not now. Not anymore. I didn't move. Just looked at him calmly, my voice soft and steady, like all the other times we'd spoken, all these years. I've done enough. The midsummer wind spilled in through the windows, warm and weightless. Leo, we don't owe each other anything anymore. His face drained of color. Summer is a season for encounters. I was one of the children sponsored by the Smith family. After the earthquake, it was Leo's mother who helped rebuild our county. I first came to the Smith estate when I was 15, our county's top scorer in the high school entrance exam. I'd been chosen to represent the town and deliver gifts of gratitude to Ms. Smith. She was exactly as I'd imagined, gentle, poised, speaking with the adults about future plans while juggling countless phone calls. She looked busy, but kind. I stood awkwardly nearby and noticed a photo on her desk. In it, a boy around my age looked impatiently at the camera, delicate features, refined brows. He looked like a prince, untamed and arrogant. The butler knocked suddenly, his face a little strained. Ma'am, the young master's out racing his motorcycle again. Miss Smith barely looked up. Go bring him back. The butler hesitated, clearly dreading the task. One of the town officials beside us pushed me forward and laughed nervously. Miss Smith, why not let Monica White go with him? She's always been good at getting along with people her age. That was when Miss Smith's gaze finally landed on me. I curled my fingers inward and forced myself to nod. I can go. Even if I couldn't, I had to. I followed the butler to a winding mountain road where Leo had been racing. He was only 17 then, but already tall and sharp-featured. His black and red motorcycle roared through the wind. He didn't stop until he was practically on top of me, skidding to a halt just in time. When he pulled off his helmet, his narrow eyes looked bored and lazy. "Country bumpkin," he said. "Who the hell are you?" I had closed my eyes, pale with fear. I genuinely thought I was about to die. It took me a few seconds to gather myself before I spoke. "I'm Monica White." His expression shifted, slightly amused. Then came his second sentence. "Miss Smith sent you to drag me back." His face immediately darkened. Leo wasn't the type to listen to anyone. But I was stubborn too. He wouldn't leave, so neither would I. I stood at the roadside and waited. The first time he rode past, he saw me. The second time, still there. The third time, maybe embarrassed, he finally gave up. Tossed his bike aside and walked me back. I followed behind him, marveling at how tall he was. The midsummer wind brushed past us. And that was the first time I remembered his name. Leo. Miss Smith decided I should stay. She wanted someone close to Leo's age to keep an eye on him, so I became his tag-along, her planted watchdog to keep him out of trouble. Leo, being a teenager, was naturally rebellious. He hated me. Thought I was nothing more than his mother's spy. He bullied me constantly. But no matter how many times I wiped away tears, I still followed him. Eventually, he stopped caring. As Leo put it, "You're so damn annoying." Everyone knew Leo had countless flings and scandals. But there was always one plain girl by his side, quiet, unassuming, invisible. The one who showed up when he spiraled too far out of control. That was me. I studied hard. Met every expectation Miss Smith had for me. And I never stopped following Leo. 7, maybe 8 years passed like that. All while keeping one secret buried deep inside me. The summer I finished my college entrance exams, I stood beneath a wisteria tree while Leo leaned lazily against the garden railing. His voice was casual, almost playful, yet every word struck my heart like a knife. "So, do you like me?" I froze. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The flowers fluttered around me, petals landing softly on my shoulders. It took me a long time before I could speak. My voice was hoarse. "Yes," I whispered. "I like you." Leo chuckled, and walked away. That night, I went to find him. I pushed open the door to a private lounge, and what I heard next shattered something inside me. The Smith family's crown prince was sprawled on the couch, laughing recklessly. His voice wasn't loud, but it made my ears ring. No, not just my ears. Every part of me hurt. Who would ever like Monica White? I like girls like Amy Clark. That was the first time I ever heard her name. I was 2 years below Leo in school. To catch up, I had even skipped a grade just to attend the same university. But in that moment, I understood. Some things, no amount of effort could ever earn. The Monica White who met Leo at 15 would never have imagined. That years later, their relationship would still be so strained. Not even a public banquet could go by without drama. Especially tonight, Leo's first public appearance since his recovery. He and James had always been rivals. Their presence together instantly attracted attention. Now, with tensions high, the entire ballroom watched closely. I tugged gently on James's sleeve. "Let's go," I whispered. Leo's eyelashes trembled. I looked away. For the first time in so many years, he heard me say, right in front of him, those words to someone else, "Let's go." It wasn't until we had walked far from the ballroom that I turned around. Leo was still standing there, head bowed, fragile and cold, just like the day he woke from his coma 2 years ago. That day, Miss Smith, the only family he had left, had already passed. Amy Clark lifted her gown, trying to reach for him. But one look from him froze her in place. I smiled faintly. James raised an eyebrow. "What are you smiling about?" I lowered my voice. "I just realized something. Not everyone can do it. Not everyone could tolerate Leo's icy moods and princely temper. Not everyone would still choose to stay, after seeing his darkest side. Especially during those years he was paralyzed. Leo had once been a golden child, admired, invincible. But after the accident, he couldn't accept being seen as broken. He stopped smiling. All his light disappeared. And worst of all, his only family, Miss Smith, died in that crash. Leo gave up on life. He tried to end it more than once. I shattered a glass, picked up a shard, and slashed it hard across my own wrist. "You want to die? Fine. I'll go with you." Leo had never seen that kind of fury in me before. His dark eyes locked onto mine for a long time, almost through gritted teeth, before he finally promised, "Monica White, I will get better." And from that day on, he cooperated with the doctors. Actively. 2 years later, he stood again. And then, left his wheelchair behind. After the gala, I went back to the Wilson residence with James. It was thanks to his grandmother that I had somewhere to stay. I was working on my resume and planned to move out as soon as I found a job. Truthfully, I didn't know James very well. Most of our past interactions involved me showing up to apologize on Leo's behalf after yet another fight between the two of them. But Grandma Wilson always welcomed me warmly. She would fan herself and say, "Oh, don't worry, boys will be boys. Come in, sweetheart, have a seat." I'd sit there for whole afternoons, awkwardly watching as she applied herbal oil to James's bruises, sunlight spilling through the windows. The guilt only built deeper inside me. I never imagined that when I hit rock bottom, it would be the Wilson family who would take me in. James and I weren't the talkative type, so the ride home was unusually quiet. I sat stiffly, like a schoolchild, hands on my knees, staring straight ahead. I didn't dare glance around until I accidentally caught James's reflection in the rearview mirror. He looked tired, eyes closed, long lashes casting shadows under the neon lights that flickered past. He suddenly opened his eyes, catching me mid-stare. A little awkward. But not unbearable. I quickly looked away. James gave a soft chuckle and asked, "Monica White, do you know what I thought when I first saw you?" Of course I remembered. He'd said it in front of Leo, loud and clear. I nodded. "You asked if I was blind." Said I must be, why else would I be following Leo around? Leo had been so furious, he got into another fight with him. James shook his head, closed his eyes again. Outside, the traffic flowed endlessly. Inside, silence stretched so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then I heard him whisper, almost to himself, "I actually thought, she's so obedient." It had been a long time since I last visited Miss Smith. I brought a bouquet of white flowers and went to the cemetery. It was not long after Leo took over the Smith group that a runaway truck slammed into their car, leaving one dead, one injured. She had been such a kind woman. If not for her, I would have never made it this far. I cleared the weeds around her grave and began to speak softly. "Miss Smith, your charity projects are still running strong. They've grown even bigger. The foundation receives so many thank you letters each year, an entire room isn't enough to store them." I lowered my gaze, watching a droplet of dew slide down a petal. Leo has recovered. He's just like before. The Smith group is back on track. He's even engaged now. The media made a huge deal of it, called it a once-in-a-lifetime proposal. The bride, you know her too. It's Amy Clark. Leo brought her home years ago. Their relationship seems good. Everything is moving in the right direction. Except me. I've stayed in place all these years. No direction. No path forward. The woman in the photo on the tombstone wore a gentle smile, as if quietly listening to everything I said. I touched the cold stone beneath her portrait. "I've left the Smith family. Would you blame me for that?" Of course, there was no reply. The graveyard was silent. Death makes no sound. I covered my face with my hands, and the tears seeped through my fingers. The truth is, after the initial glow wore off, I was never truly happy there. Sometimes I wondered, if only I hadn't scored first place on that exam, I would have never come to this place. I cried quietly for a while before gathering my things to leave. It was only when I stood that I noticed someone nearby. He had been standing there for who knows how long. I lowered my eyes. There was only one path out of the cemetery, and I had no choice but to walk past him. Leo was likely here to see Miss Smith too. It was pure coincidence that we'd run into each other. As I passed by him, he opened his mouth. "You're crying in front of my mom's grave, you." He didn't finish. I turned to face him, eyes glistening with tears that hadn't yet fallen. Leo swallowed the rest of his words. The truth was, our relationship had never been that bad. He'd only ever treated me that harshly twice. Once, when I secretly started applying for jobs because I was tired of being his assistant. He found out and exploded. And once, not long ago, after he received that email. The next day, he kicked me out of the Smith family. One before the accident. One after. 2 years apart. But this time, I didn't feel as shattered as before. I looked at him calmly, and for the girl I once was, I asked, "Leo, was it because I never showed you how I felt, that you truly believed I couldn't be hurt? Did you really think, no matter what you did, I'd always follow behind you like I did when I was 15? Leo's lips tightened. His eyes were pitch black. The hand at his side clenched several times before he finally balled it into a fist. His voice twisted into a sneer. "Monica, you'll never repay what you owe. You killed my mother. Don't act innocent." Even as I rode back, my head was a foggy mess. Leo had tossed me his final words like a dagger from above. That car accident? It wasn't an accident. Guess who betrayed the Smith family? I received an email in my inbox. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. Inside were documents, evidence his people had gathered. Everything pointed toward that crash being no accident at all. Leo and Miss Smith were on their way to sign a major contract. Their itinerary had been kept strictly confidential. Except for me. I was the only one who knew. Leo's assistant. Raised within the Smith family. Someone they trusted completely. There was even a photo, me, supposedly meeting with someone from a rival company. The timestamp was damning, right before the crash. But the photo was fake. Doctored. I didn't even know that person. To Leo, though, I was the only loose end. He didn't even confront me. He simply sentenced me. I let out a bitter laugh and curled up in my seat. No wonder. No wonder he told me to get out the day after finishing the proposal sketches. No wonder he would rather go back to Amy Clark than have anything to do with me. I closed the email and didn't bother explaining. I knew he wouldn't listen. If Leo had just looked a little deeper, he would have found out that I wasn't the only one who knew his schedule. Amy Clark did, too. I hadn't slept so deeply in a long time. Even before the crash, I had already begun applying for jobs behind his back. Amy Clark was too aggressive, and I was just exhausted. She was the only official girlfriend Leo had ever acknowledged, and he spoiled her to the point of lawlessness. She couldn't stand me. Leo's flings had caused me trouble before. But none of them ever came after me like she did. Can you imagine? A girl barely in her 20s, publicly slut-shamed in front of the entire company? Amy Clark did just that. At the time, Leo and Ms. Smith were away finalizing a confidential deal. Even Amy didn't know their whereabouts. She couldn't reach Leo. But I knew where he was. She asked, I refused to tell her. I even blocked her from entering the president's office. Everyone in the company knew Amy Clark was Leo's beloved. Only I was foolish enough to block her way. She called people over to watch. Then slapped me across the face. What did she say? Monica, even if you stood naked in front of Leo, he wouldn't spare you a glance. Get out of my way. You think clinging to the Smith family is your golden ticket out of that poor county you crawled from? Always tailing Leo like a pest, it's disgusting. No different from a mistress. I hadn't done anything wrong. But under so many eyes, I felt like I'd been stripped bare, exposed, humiliated. She barged into the office and got a look at Leo's itinerary. The next day, Leo and Ms. Smith had their accident. I never once suspected Amy Clark. After all, both Leo and Ms. Smith had treated her with kindness. But now I understand. Only the ones who were never truly loved are the ones who memorize every act of kindness, clinging to it, desperate to repay it. People like me. When I woke up, the world had changed. Smith family car crash conspiracy was trending #1 on Twitter. The public loves a juicy scandal, especially after Leo's extravagant engagement had dominated headlines for weeks. Insiders now claimed the crash wasn't an accident, it had been planned, orchestrated by a rival company. They said the person who leaked Leo's location was his then special assistant. A girl raised and funded by the Smith family. They even attached a photo, me, supposedly meeting with the enemy group. The exact same photo I'd received in my inbox. The exposé was written with such certainty, it might as well have been gospel truth. Amy Clark gave a public statement too. She was more restrained now, smiling sweetly for the cameras. Monica? I never really liked her, she said softly. But she always followed Leo around. We even fought about her once. I just never imagined she'd do something like this. The interview was long, full of veiled accusations, calling me a third party, an ingrate, the stereotypical villainous pauper in a wealthy family drama. Leo stood beside her, expression blank. I saw the online comments too, raised her for years, and she turned out to be a snake. Poor Miss Smith. Amy Clark really suffered. Even dating Leo meant getting permission from his assistant? Press charges. Where is she now? What kind of company would still dare to hire her? Honestly, the fact that Amy and Leo are still together after all this, they're the real love story. Someone suddenly pulled the phone out of my hand. I looked up, James was staring at my pale face. Stop reading. Grandma's calling for dinner. My lips parted. I tried to explain, it wasn't me. James didn't even hesitate. I know. It wasn't perfunctory. He truly believed me. Just like the internet predicted, every interviewer who had been friendly suddenly ghosted me. If I couldn't clear my name, I'd basically be socially dead for life. Never to be hired. Unredeemable. Exactly the outcome Leo wanted. Miserable enough to satisfy his resentment. Only Wilson Group still dared to keep my resume. I had submitted it along with dozens of others during my job hunt. But I declined the offer. James flipped through my resume. Without looking at me, he asked, why? I shook my head. My reputation is toxic now. If I show up at Wilson, the media will eat it alive. It'll hurt your company. James turned his head slowly, studied me for a moment, then gave a helpless smile. Monica, you're so oblivious. Oblivious? I looked at him, confused. But before I could respond, the police came. The Smith family had filed formal charges. As someone involved in the case, I had to be interrogated. Before entering the interrogation room, I saw Leo and Amy Clark. Their expressions were interesting. Amy looked like a gambler with nothing left to lose. And honestly, I got it. She'd cleaned up everything so well these past 2 years, any remaining evidence was long gone. The last obstacle between her and Leo was me. Once I was behind bars, she'd be completely safe. Not only would the legendary proposal be hers, she'd have the fairy tale wedding too. She'd become the enviable new Ms. Smith. Leo's expression was complicated. His jaw was tense. I noticed his fingers trembling as they fidgeted unconsciously. He gave me one look, then turned away. His eyes were red. I looked away and walked into the interrogation room. It only took a few hours for the police to dig through my entire life. In addition to that photo, there was other so-called evidence tying me to the incident. Everything fit together just too neatly, like a web spun specifically to strangle me. I was placed in temporary custody for 10 days. Because the Smith family crash had stirred such massive public interest, conspiracy theories had run rampant online. The authorities took it seriously and assigned a full task force. Justice had to be served. In those 10 days, I didn't think about anything. It was the best rest I'd had in years. I slept like the dead. On the 10th day, everything came to light. I was cleared of all charges. The final list of fugitives included not only the enemy group behind the Smith family crash, but one additional name, Amy Clark. Heaven's net is wide, but nothing escapes it. The police cleared my name. The moment I stepped out of the city's public security bureau, I barely got a breath of fresh air before I was blinded by a sea of flashing lights. Reporters had been waiting. They swarmed me like wolves, mics in my face, questions firing one after another. Miss White, how do you feel now that it's confirmed Amy Clark was the one who betrayed the Smith family? Miss White, all these years beside President Smith, was it because you were in love with him? Miss White, when President Smith was paralyzed, the one by his side wasn't Amy Clark, was it you? I could barely breathe, until a hand pulled me back. James shoved a bouquet of cleansing white flowers into my arms and shielded me as he guided me into the car. The second I climbed in, I turned to look back. Media lights flashed in chaos. And I saw Leo. Standing at a distance. Exhausted. Broken. Hollow. That was when I gave my final answer to the press. No. The person who stayed beside Leo wasn't me. I gave up on him. A long, long time ago. So much had happened in just 10 days. Not long ago, the internet was filled with curses, wishing someone like me would be sentenced to death. But then the exposés began, one after another. The first ripple came when someone posted photos of Amy Clark studying abroad in Milan, exposing the lie she had crafted. Everyone realized that right after Leo's accident, she had flown off to Milan without hesitation. She lived in peace, while he carried unbearable weight. They had nothing to do with each other. People had shipped their love story because they believed in the idea of companionship during one's lowest moments. Now they were disgusted to realize it had all been a fabrication, a scheme for publicity. The second wave came when someone uploaded the video of Amy Clark slapping me. The footage was crystal clear, showing me humiliated, holding my swollen cheek, still blocking the office door for Leo, only to be shoved to the ground. Amy had always marketed herself as a bright, elegant professional. But in the video, her expression was twisted, aggressive, even vicious. Her polished image from reality shows and online interviews crumbled instantly. Rumor had it she didn't dare answer her phone for days. The public outrage was overwhelming. More and more secrets spilled out, real or fake, until the police announcement clarified everything. I was innocent. And Amy Clark had been officially declared wanted. That notice held more weight than anything. Even the interviewers who once rejected me reached out again. I turned them all down. Even Wilson Group, I didn't plan to go. Then I got a call from my hometown. The principal of my old middle school, a woman just as admirable as Ms. Smith, asked me if I'd consider returning home to teach to help support local education. I said yes. I made one last trip to the Smith estate. This time, no one could stop me. I had left some things behind when I was kicked out. I thought the room would be covered in dust, but when I opened the door, it was spotless. Sunlight spilled across a vase of freshly folded flowers on the desk. I packed quickly. When I opened the drawer, I hesitated. But then, from a hidden compartment, I pulled out an old photograph. It was taken with an early digital camera. A boy, full of life, wind blowing through his hair. He was walking ahead with his friends, smiling carelessly, then, for some reason, turned back, as if to check whether someone was still following. I took that photo when I was 17. Back then, I had thought, no one can capture the midsummer wind. But I could take a picture of it. Still, I didn't take the photo with me. I left it on the desk. Whether Leo chose to keep it or throw it away, it would be up to him. The wisteria tree in the courtyard was blooming again, its flowers cascading softly. I stood there for a while, admiring it. Then I heard a voice behind me, low, cautious. Monica. As if he were afraid of waking from a dream. I turned around and smiled at him gently. Dark circles clouded Leo's eyes, and stubble shadowed his jaw. The arrogance he once carried so easily was now gone. The young master of the Smith family. I had never seen him like this, cautious, humble, almost fragile. His lashes trembled. His voice was hoarse. I started investigating the crash as soon as I was strong enough. When I found out it might be connected to you, I couldn't keep going. Every piece of evidence felt like a blade. I never imagined you'd betray us. But once the thought took root, I couldn't stop it. He laughed bitterly. You get it, right? People like us, we're used to being stabbed in the back. But when it came to you, I couldn't bear it. You know what I thought while reviewing the files? I wished I had just died in that crash. I lost control. Made terrible choices. That whole proposal? I did it for you to see. He spoke for a long time, recounting his guilt and regret. But I simply looked at him, eyes clear, and softly interrupted. No. Leo froze. I smiled faintly, pressing my lips together. You already knew you were wrong when you did all that. But you didn't care. Whether I betrayed you or not, whether it was real or a misunderstanding, you thought I'd forgive you anyway. Right or wrong, you thought I'd always forgive you. And the truth was? I always knew. If Leo had never been paralyzed. If everyone hadn't turned their backs on him. He never would have looked at me. His eyes were always drawn to girls like Amy Clark. Even the ring he gave me didn't fit. He was silent for a long time. I thought it was just the shadows cast by the falling petals. But no. They were Leo's tears. He reached out and clutched my wrist tightly. Please, he said. I'm a bastard. Just this once, can you forgive me? The wisteria shimmered in the light. And I thought of when I was 17 again. Leo, leaning against the railing, asking with a lazy grin, Monica, do you like me? Now, I gently pried his hand off. I won't forgive you, I said. His gaze dropped to the scar on my wrist, faint but visible. His pupils shrank. His lips trembled. But he couldn't say a word. I soothed him gently, like talking to a child. Leo, your life was saved because Miss Smith shielded you in that crash. You have to live well, for her. The Smith family group was her life's work. You have to protect it. I'm leaving. His face went pale. Completely bloodless. And in that moment, it was like something deep inside him collapsed. Someone he thought would always be there. Was really gone. The midsummer wind would never return. In the following weeks, West City's headlines flipped upside down. The so-called legendary proposal turned into a scandal. One villain. One coward. Amy Clark's sins were exposed. And Leo was her accomplice. The Smith Group's stock plummeted. Leo crashed his car again, this time on purpose. He broke his leg and was back in a wheelchair. On the bus back to my hometown, I received a text from Leo. He wrote, I'll repay everything I owe you. I blocked him without hesitation. Outside the window, the scenery passed slowly. Just like it had the first time I came. On the glass, reflected faintly beside me, was James. He looked like he loved sleeping. Right now, he was leaned back, eyes closed. He was a CEO. He didn't have to do any of this. But he donated supplies to my old school. And insisted on personally escorting them, even if it meant squeezing onto a bus with me. I couldn't stop him. So I let him come. The bus swayed gently. James's head fell onto my shoulder but he didn't wake. I smiled. Looking forward, watching the scenery change. But knowing, without a doubt, that I was heading toward all the midsummers yet to come. Not all love deserves to be remembered. I've let go of the past, the pain, and the people who never saw me. From now on, I'll walk my own path, free, light, and unburdened. The midsummer wind is mine now. And so is every tomorrow.